Hey everyone, it's me, Kirk Mastin, here at Mastin Labs, and today we're going to be doing a huge variety of edits across some really great community images that were just sent to us from our fantastic community. And I'm going to be helping everyone who submitted an image find the right preset and the right preset pack for that image. So let's jump into it. First things first, we're going to go over our quick three-step workflow. You want to do it in this order. This is how it works. It's really simple. Apply the preset, adjust your exposure after applying the preset, and then finally you're going to be adjusting your white balance and tint to get everything dialed in. And most of it is going to revolve around the magenta green tint slider. That is the most important. That is the most important control in Lightroom for editing photos, in my opinion. I know it doesn't seem like it. It seems like why that control, but that is where people get tripped up. That's where you get good skin tones. That's where you kind of unlock the beautiful color in your image. So I will always be paying special attention to that, and I'll walk you through some tips on how to get the best result you can. Okay, so here are the images for today. Really nice wide variety of great photos here. It's gonna be fun to edit. I'm just going to dive right in here with Dominique Ellis's image. Beautiful photo. Love it. For being like direct light, it's nice direct light. I think the sun must have been kind of low for it to be that way. Like she's fairly evenly lit under her eyes or in her eye sockets. Sometimes that can get really dark if the sun is like way above you, if it's nice and bright out. But this looks like a sunset picture. Should be pretty easy to edit. And for this photo, it's hard to tell since it's a raw, but there's a lot of contrast here, a lot. It doesn't look like it because raws are really flat, super flat. But if I was to do any kind of basic edit, I mean, no preset or anything at all, and I was just to add a little contrast and adjust the white balance, it can get pretty contrasty pretty quick, like on her shoulder here, on her cheekbones, etc. So I'm going to be using a very light preset for this. It depends on which way you want to go with it. If you want to go with something just super bold, like you just think like maybe like a commercial image, just really bold, I would just jump right in with like Ektar or gold. I know looks insane. It looks insane like right when I put it on. Don't worry, that's just the very beginning of it. But you start with this, start with Ektar. You can tone it way down with temperature and tint and get to a really nice look for her, and ignore how it looks right now. I know this is crazy, but just watch. So we're going to drop the exposure just a tiny bit, take temperature, drop it down, and get somewhere like in this range. Now looking at tint, overall the image is very vibrant, maybe a little too vibrant still, but I think it's a little bit magenta, so I'm going to just drop down the tint slider towards green just a tiny bit. I'm kind of paying attention to the midtones and highlights right here on her shoulder. If normally I look somewhere behind her and find a neutral patch, something that's a neutral color, and dial in the tint that way, but I don't really have any good reference points. Maybe this, whatever it is on the side, but I'm looking right here to kind of get my tint dialed in. So maybe like right about here, and then since she's in full sun, it's like sunset, we're going to go down to orange reduction. So this is kind of an extra tool in the toolkit, not to be used all the time, just sometimes, but it really helps to kind of take the edge off of that orange. And that's a nice kind of before and after, all things considered, with the really bright sun, if you want just a super vibrant kind of commercial looking image. Okay, now keep that in mind. I'm going to create a virtual copy of this, reset it, and another way that I would go, and so this is Ektar modified slightly from the Adventure Everyday pack. That's one option. Another option you could do totally different is go to the opposite end of the intensity spectrum of looks and go to like Fuji 400H. And Fuji 400H is usually used in like kind of very light and airy wedding photography photos, but it's really nice because it has two really important qualities. One, is that it's very low contrast, and two, it has very low saturation. So we're in a situation with this photo where we have high saturation and high contrast, and so by not leaning into it, by kind of leaning back away from it, because Ektar leans into it, we can get a much softer, more kind of neutral photo. So let me show you that. So here we are in Fuji Color Original. I'm going to click on Fuji 400H. See, it's not such a dramatic change as Ektar. I still need to do the other two steps, so that's adjusting exposure and then white balance. So I'm going to drop the exposure just a little bit, and then I'm going to go into white balance. I'm going to warm it up a skosh, and then again I'm looking at the background here, this column. I'm looking at kind of the higher midtones in her shoulder, and I'm going to add just a little bit of magenta, just a tiny bit, I mean a few points. Now looking at this after looking at the previous one, maybe the exposure is a little low. Let me go up a little bit. Looking at the previous one, it is like it couldn't be more different. They're like opposite of each other in terms of vibrancy, color, contrast, but they both work depending on what you want. So it's kind of an interesting quandary that we're in, because Ektar on the left is from the Adventure Everyday pack, which is kind of a do-it-all pack. It's got like a very bright and colorful look in it, and then it's also got Gold 200, which is great. It's very toned down. It's slightly stylized with kind of jade green shadows, and then it's got a really nice Tri-X black and white in it. On the other hand, we've got Fuji 400H on the right from the Fuji original pack, which is super popular with wedding photographers and say like newborn baby photographers and some family photographers. And it's very pastel and very like low contrast. And as you can see, both work depending on what you're wanting. So yes, the result is inconclusive on this one. But those are the two directions I would go. Would be either Adventure Everyday, something in that pack, or something in Fuji Original. My advice is just get both of them, and then you can choose. But thank you so much, Dominique, for sending this in. Let's go on to the next photo. All right, this is from Maria Turnbow. Yes, it looks very Pacific Northwest. I happen to live in the Pacific Northwest, and it looks like a lake I was at just a few days ago. Beautiful background. The sky is a little bit blown out up here. I think we can fix that. I don't think there's anything missing. I also think all the detail is still here in the dress, no problem. And so I need to determine what look is going to be best for this. You could go a lot of directions with this photo. I would probably stay away from Fuji Pushed or Fuji Original, either of those packs, because they're for a more high-key, light and airy setting. And in this photo, we've got a lot of really dark background. All this is very, very dark. If we were in like Palm Springs or something, everything would be like tan and like terracotta. Like all the background would be very light. And that's where something like Fuji 400H would really shine, you know, like the actual film or the preset. But in a situation that's darker like this, I like to go to one of my old standbys, like the thing that started it all for me, which is, let me see here. It's hard to point backwards. Portra, right there. Portra. Portra is good. It's all I used in the Pacific Northwest for, gosh, probably 15 years. Except for weddings when I went down to California or overseas to somewhere really tropical, then I would switch it up with Fuji 400H. But I'm going to go into Portra Original, and I'm going to pick Portra 800 for her. Why? It's got a lot of pop, meaning it's got a lot of contrast in it, and I think this photo could benefit from some of that. It really kind of sets off her white dress and really separates her from the background. And then the second reason is that Portra 800 has the most saturation of the three Portra films. All of the Portra films look really, really good on lighter skin, especially if you don't have a tan. They introduce a lot of warmth, a lot of orange, a lot of yellow, and I thought it would be really good for her in this particular situation, and it would also enhance the background. and kind of pop her out of the background so she doesn't kind of blend in. So that's Portra 800. As far as exposure goes, I like things. I like the whites to be really white and the blacks to be really black in the photo, but I might bring this down just a tiny bit, like to there. I mean, that was just a very small adjustment, and then I'm going to go into temperature and tint. And overall, I think this photo could be warmed up, especially Portra. Portra kind of lives in a higher temperature or like color temperature range compared to Fujifilm, so I'm going to warm this up to about here, and now her skin looks really good. Now we're on to tint. Tint is very important. Tint is the tough one. So my trick, and you've seen it in a million other videos, and we even have a whole video just about tint, is to look for neutrals in the photo, not necessarily skin, but neutrals, and dial in tint that way, because it's very hard to see if something is a little bit magenta or green if it's skin for some reason. But your brain is able to determine that pretty easily if it's an inanimate object like clothing or rock or tree. I don't know why. It's just that way. So I can look at like this rock outcropping up here. I can look at her dress. I can assume that this is either white or cream colored, maybe champagne colored, I don't know. There's not much else around here for me to look at that I can determine as being like a neutral color, like gray, black, or white, but I've got a few good reference points. So looking at all this, I can see just a tiniest bit of magenta in here, and for sure I can see it in this rock outcropping. So if I go to my tint slider and just slide it towards green, I mean, I barely moved it. It went from +9 to +3, but look at this rock outcropping. So here's +9, and that's +3. I don't know if you can see the difference. Yeah, you can. So I zoom back out, and now all the color is like perfectly aligned. So I don't even really have a word for this. If you get the tint right, you kind of unlock the pureness of all the colors in the photo. Like there's no global tint on top of them to kind of muddy what they actually look like. So you kind of pull it apart and get the maximum color out of your photo, like accurate, true to life color, just by getting the tint slider right. And if I zoom in, and now like I didn't even look at her skin. I didn't even look at it, right? Her skin is going to look more accurate from that adjustment that I made on the rocks above her. So if I go back to where the tint was, it's kind of hard to tell, but especially if you look at her arm, it's not quite as good as when I fix that rock that was above her, and now her skin tone is like really accurate to this film and this situation. So I hope that is helpful. Sometimes I get totally lost in the weeds because I think about this stuff all the time. We have one question. I have one thing I'm going to do before I take the question, one tiny finishing touch. I mentioned early on about this being kind of blown out. One thing you can do is just add highlight soft from the tone profile section and see how that brings in the sky, and that would be the last final touch I would do. So the tone profiles are like micro contrast controls that either target highlights or shadows, and it's something that's very special to our system to let you dial in your image without it ever looking fake or weird. So, okay, question time.
Yeah, Trent is in the chat just asking what this Superia would look like on this.
Okay, yeah, so Trent is in our chat asking what Superia would look like on this photo. That's another good choice. I love Superia. It is a great everyday film. Like the actual film is great every day. I shoot it all the time. And then it makes for a really nice film emulation. You can use it on almost everything, and it's part of the reason that it's in the Fujicolor Everyday pack, because you can use it every day. So here's Superia 400. Quite a different look. It's a lot brighter, a lot warmer. In fact, I'm going to bring the exposure down like it did on the other photo, just so they're kind of even Steven. And it's, what did I do? I added a tiny bit of green, previous one. I can do that again. And I think the white balance is right. Maybe it could go a little bit cooler. But you can see, oh, and I'll also add highlight soft so they're even. There we go. Let me pull them both up for you. So it's kind of an interesting comparison. Totally different film manufacturers, completely different film aesthetic and reasons that the films were made. I mean, films developed by Kodak, their philosophy, their way of doing everything is completely different than films developed by Fuji in Japan, like a totally different development path of the actual analog film. And you can see a lot of that in the emulations here. In general, films made by Fuji focus a lot on green. Green is very important. It maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a cultural thing, you know, like from the very beginning of Fujifilm, green was really important. Maybe it's the reason that the actual film boxes are green for Fuji. I don't know. Maybe you tell me. I don't know. I know a lot of film history, a lot, and there's still some things I'm not quite sure about. Whereas Kodak is very focused on warmth, orange, yellow, things like that, not so concerned with green. And you can see that in the foliage in the background. I mean, it's like very dramatic. Also, the amount of micro contrast between the two films is very different. What is micro contrast? Micro contrast is what gives a film photo its 3D quality. It's a soft, poppy contrast. Micro contrast. Again, a very hard thing to explain, but you can see it in the trees. You can see it in the separation of these branches in front of the lake and in her. And is having a lot of micro contrast good? I don't know. It depends. Do you like a softer image? Do you like an image, or do you like an image that's very three-dimensional? You can see over here on Portra, it's very soft. It's very gentle in the way that it presents kind of that 3D effect. Whereas Fujifilm, or Superia in particular, has a lot of depth to it. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's an interesting comparison.
Yeah.
You also, just a quick shout out to Charnel Price, France Trinidad, and Marcos Valdez.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Okay, let's move on. All right, Dominique Ellis, thank you for sending this in. What shall we use on this photo? And before I get started, I do not recommend being on train tracks. It's kind of dangerous. But I don't know the situation of this. Maybe they're abandoned, who knows. But anyway, just to put that out there. Now back to the photo. Very cool photo. It's very moody. It's a very moody photo. You didn't specify what you wanted me to edit with. So I'm going to just kind of start with what I think is important when choosing a preset or film, actual film, is what is the vibe of the shooting situation. This falls into the moody camp, which is mysterious, lower key lighting. A lot of things that are dark, like her shirt is black, her boots are black, the background is black, or not black, but you know, it's like in shadow. So I'm going to stick with something that's dark and moody to start with. So I'm going to go to Portra Pushed. This is our moodiest pack. And I'm going to pick, let me see here, I don't know. Portra 160 Push 2 Stops has a ton of red in the shadows. I always do that one. I'm just like addicted to it, so I'm not going to do it this time. If you want to see it in another video, or maybe I'll do it later in this video, I don't know. But I'm not going to do it because I always do it. Gotta break, you gotta do pattern interrupt. Like, don't get stuck in a pattern. Okay, let's do Portra 400. Yeah, Portra 400 Push 1 Stop. So Portra 400 Push 1 Stop is taking normal Portra 400 film, underexposing it a stop, taking it to the lab and saying, please push this a stop in development, and essentially make it an 800 speed film to compensate for that underexposure that you did on purpose. Why did you do it? You did it because you wanted a more stylized look, you wanted more contrast, you wanted a change in the color and in the shadow color in particular. So why did I pick it? I picked it because this kind of moody image calls for that stylized kind of toned shadow, more contrast, etc. Am I done editing it? No. I just applied Portra 400, push one stop. There's still 2 more steps. And it was kind of an underexposed image to start with. So going to increase the exposure just a little bit to kind of open up the midtones here. If you keep increasing the exposure, you're eventually going to get to something that is not correct for this image. Where was I? But if you just go up just a little bit, it kind of brings out these midtones here, and that's what I want. Season to taste. You know, it really depends on how you like it. There will be a point where you go up too far and it just looks broken. You don't want that. So next is temperature. I always do temperature next because it's easy. I think most people can see if something is very warm or very cool. That's pretty easy. So I'm going to go up just a little bit. I'm not going to go way up in temperature because I don't want her to be kind of bluish, but I also don't want it to be like she's basking in the sun because the sun is behind her. So I'm going to go up just a little bit. And now I'm going to go to tint. Here we go. Here's another image where it's kind of hard to find some good neutrals. Her shirt is black, I think. Yeah, her boots are black. Maybe I can look at her boots. I think the tint looks correct. I can look at the little LVs on her bag, like the little white spots. Those look pretty good. So I don't think it needs a tint, any kind of tint correction. I don't see anything in the rocks here. These are cooler because they're in the shadow, and shadows are always cooler than things that are in full sun. So you can look at any Renaissance painting and you'll see what I mean. So I think it's pretty much done. Now I could go to some modifiers over here, you know, something in the tone profile section maybe. And if I wanted to, you know, make it a little moodier, I could do like all hard. If I want to go the opposite way and like kind of open up the tones, I could do all soft. What I might do is actually just do highlight soft and just work on bringing the sky back in, like more detail back in the sky. So let's do highlight soft. And there is before and after. Like not a huge, I mean, it's just not a huge bombastic edit. That is a word I've never used on air, but it's not like we're radically changing the photo, and that's not what film does. Film is not about radically changing something. It's about kind of capturing that timeless, you know, consistent film palette that you want for your image, and that's just a nice clean edit between the two. She really pops from the background, but it doesn't look really fake. We've got really nice preserved sky detail here, and we still have those nice punchy black shadows which exist in film. Film is not a thing where you can see all the tone perfectly. If you actually look at a film scan, film has really nice, deep, dark black shadows. It's something I really love about it. And if those shadows are kind of gray or lifted looking, so it's very popular to have like faded, you know, a faded look. Do you know why that even happens? If you're shooting film, it's because you underexposed. That's why you get faded shadows when you shoot film. That's it. It's because you accidentally underexposed your film. And in getting the exposure right for the rest of the image, your scanner technician, the person that's scanning your film, has to bring the whole image up, and it makes your shadows get really gray. Okay. We have a question, yes. All right, so Rory Jacobs asks, do most people have a misconception of what Portra 400 actually looks like? It's so common and shot so many different ways. Do you think people get wrong what box speed Portra truly looks like? That's a really good question. That's a really good question. What does it actually look like? There's 3 things that make up what a film looks like. One is the light it's shot, or the way that you shoot it. Do you overexpose it, underexpose it, or push it? You're talking box speed though. So I shoot box speed Portra 400 at ISO 320. So I slightly overexpose it. I think that's its true film speed. And we actually did an entire blog post on what the true film speeds are for a lot of popular films, like actual films, so that when you shoot them, you get the most out of them. So there's three factors. One is the ISO that you shoot it at, what you think the true box speed is. So I shoot it at 320 and I meter for the shadows or like midtones.
You have 3 questions.
We have 3 questions. Okay, so I'll go quick on this one. So the second thing that's really, really important is what scanner it's scanned on. So if you scan your film on a home scanner, like a flatbed scanner, good luck. I mean, that is like the worst experience in the world. I've done it. I've had every kind of home scanner you can imagine for like the last 20 years. It sucks. It's totally inconsistent. You basically spend all day scanning 4 frames and like tweaking color profiles, and you have like 4,000 options. So I won't even get into home scanning. It is just crazy. The other major scanners would be a Noritsu scanner or a Fuji Frontier scanner. That's what we use, and they have a very distinct style that they apply to the film essentially. And then the third factor is, how do you edit your film scan? I do a very simple edit. I just kind of get the black and the white points locked in. That's about it. And I try to preserve the intention and look of that film, but a lot of people take it way further. So what does Portra 400 actually look like? For me, it's shot at 320, scanned on a Fuji Frontier with minimal editing afterward. That's how I think it looks. So I hope that helps, Rory. I don't know. Okay, 2 more questions, and we'll go back to editing. Yes. I do not know how to pronounce your first name. Lamar. Okay, because of the 2 L's. Lamar Vasquez asks, hi there, can you use these presets with strobe work? Yes, you can. If your strobe work is, if you're using like natural colored lights, yes, absolutely. If you're using gels and other things like that, it can get pretty tricky. Real film and the emulations that we make from real film have a lot of contrast in them, and that is just kind of a hallmark of film. If you were lighting people with strobes and shooting actual film, you absolutely must have like a fill light, or be very careful about transitions between light and dark if you're shooting real film, because it can't handle the extreme tonal recovery that you would get from, say, shooting a Hasselblad or something, like a digital Hasselblad, where you've got all that bit depth and you can just stretch it, and it doesn't really matter how you shot it. You can just like tease information out wherever you want. So my advice with strobes is that it looks absolutely fantastic with strobes if at the time of lighting your subject, you're lighting as though you're shooting real film. That is the best answer I can give you. So that being said, it can be a little bit tricky for digital photographers who use very directional, hard strobes to use our products, because they're meant to give you a film look, and that introduces a lot of contrast and micro contrast that you have to have that under control when you light as though you're shooting film. I hope that helps, but thank you for asking. Great question.
You ready for the next one?
Yes. Charnel Price asks, I own Fuji Original. I'm eyeballing Fuji Color Push. When would Push be better used versus Original? I shoot engagement and weddings and branding. Great question, Charnel. So Fuji Push in general is great when you want to show energy and joy in a photo. So Fuji Original is like light, airy, fantasy, fantastical, floating through a Tuscan villa. Fuji Push is like, you're just like running on the beach. You're still glamorous. You're still like in nice, cool clothes, but you're more high energy. There's the highlights are pink. Your skin is more peachy. It's just like more vibrant. And that's what happens when you push Fujifilm. It goes from being very kind of neutral and cool to being very kind of pink and peachy. So, okay. One more question.
Well, actually, so this is Marcos Valdez image.
Oh yeah.
And he's asking, first off, he's saying that this image was lit with a strobe.
Oh cool. Okay, great.
One strobe, and then he was asking if we could do portrait pushed, and I think he says color every day, but I don't know.
Probably Ektar maybe, or gold.
Yeah.
Okay, so Marcos Valdez, who shot this image, great photographer, awesome guy. He shoots a lot of film too. down in Mexico. And he sent us this image, great image, and this will help answer the previous question about strobes. So this is lit with one strobe, I'm assuming. I don't know if there's a fill light or anything on the opposite side.
You said one strobe.
So just one strobe on one side. Okay, so this is a difficult lighting situation if you're shooting real film. And you'll see what I mean. And I'll show you some tricks to kind of deal with it. Depends on what you want. Depends on what you want. Sometimes you don't need to see into the shadows. Like you're not wanting to. So we wanted Portra pushed. That makes sense. Okay, so kind of moody. She has a moody look for sure. He looks pretty friendly, but I think it'll still work nice. So let's do. All right, let's just cruise through here. I'm not going to do 160 push 2 stops. I'm just not going to do it because I do it every time. I'm going to do Portra 800 push 2 stops. Okay, so notice how there is no detail in the shadows. Like it is black. It is gone. That is because there is no fill light on the other side. When you push film, especially 2 stops, what happens is you are artificially changing the ISO of that film through chemistry, through being in chemistry. And what happens is the shadows just go to black because you're pulling the midtones and highlights up to try to get some exposure out of them, like trying to get detail out of them. And a negative is opposite of what you think, like lights are dark, darks are light, etc. So anything light in the photo is going to be black on a negative, and anything black on the final thing is going to be white on the negative. So what happens when you underexpose an image? There's nothing on the negative. It goes black. There's no detail there. There's no information. So when you push film, especially 2 stops, as you can see, there's no information. That's why I said earlier you need to light as though you're shooting film. And I think that trips people up. Okay, that being said, let me get back to the thing here. I'm getting a little wild. Okay, so Portra 800 push 2 stops. I would then increase the temperature. Her hair was very cool. That's where I kept looking, was like right here. I don't really have too many neutrals to work off of, but I'm going to look at her hair. That was a little bit too cool. I'm going to warm that up. Now I'm going to look for a neutral for tint. This child's shirt and pants look like they're gray, so we can use that. And looking at it, they look a little bit green, so I'm going to add just a tiny bit of tint. Or add a, what does that even mean? Add a tiny bit of tint. I'm going to add a little bit of magenta on the tint slider. I'm just making stuff up. Okay, so like right about there is really, really nice for Portra 800 push 2 stops. But you are seeing the problem I'm talking about, where anything in the shadows just goes black. It's just gone, as the actual film would. Now, what you can do is you can go over to the tone profile section and try to pull a little bit of that out the same way that the scanner would by using Shadow Soft. And I don't know if it's going to do much. I'm seeing a little difference on her hair, like there's a little more detail back here, but it's not really helping too much. Another thing we could do is, we don't want the highlights to really kind of get too hot. What we could do is do all soft, which pushes the highlights down and lifts the shadows up, and we could just increase the exposure and get just a little more detail out of the whole photo. So now we're starting to see under here. But overall, it's pretty difficult. I think the photo looks killer this way. I think it looks super good. Looks almost like a Renaissance painting or something. But okay, let's try the other one that Marcos asked for.
Let me put up a comment real quick from Marcos.
Okay. Oh my God. Yes. Do you like it? He likes it?
He likes it.
Okay, that's a good oh my God.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so you wanted a pushed look. There you go. It looks like a darn, I gotta get my impressionist painters right, or my classical painters right. Caravaggio. It looks like a Caravaggio. Yeah, I am very cultured. I think I got that right. I don't. Who knows? I haven't had enough Ektar nectar today to know. But speaking of Ektar and Ektar, let's go into the Adventure Everyday pack. This is the other look you wanted, Marcos. So let's try. Let's just do Ektar. That's the most popular one. You can see even with Ektar, which is like a incredibly contrasty film. It's basically like a slide film. Since it hasn't been pushed, do you see that you can actually see the background? It's still there because it wasn't pushed. Meaning that the black parts of the photo weren't just like pinned down to the ground in the chemistry to get enough exposure for midtones and highlights. So that's like box speed Ektar. We got to work on the temperature and tint here a little bit, but so I'm going to warm it up again, and it's a little bit green. So let me just dial that in, and it is a very colorful film. Even in a moody photo, the joy of Ektar is still like just trying to break through. It's funny, just in the exuberance of the color. Like look at the saturation here compared to this, where it's like that is mood, that is moody, right? Very different. Even the highlights are a little bit crushed. Like it's very, very different. Oh, let's do all soft so they're equal. All soft, and then bring the exposure up so that they're kind of equal. Look at that. You're getting quite a nice range of tone compared to the one that's been pushed 2 stops. So I don't know which one you like better. I'm very curious, like what the audience thinks. You know, what they prefer out of these two. But you can see from the one on the left, from the Portra Push pack, that's our boudoir, moody, dark and moody pack. You can see it in the crushed highlights, the kind of some shift in shadows and highlights, like the colors, and it just has a lot of mood to it. Whereas as Ektar is like trying to be happy, it's like Ektar is trying to be happy in a serious situation, and you can see the color of it kind of popping through in the more detail. So yeah, whichever one you like, you like. I hope that helps. All right, let's move on. Come on, mouse. There we go. All right, this is from Vernon. Oh, hey, Vernon DeCoker. Thank you for sending this in. Now, this image I would normally do Fuji original Fuji 400H because it's kind of like where I go to with weddings. But I just feel that this would do really well with Superia for some reason. So I want to try that first. My mouse is deciding to not respond. The struggle is real. Okay. Why did I pick Superia? I just have a hunch that it will be nice for her skin tones. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I'm looking at this stuff for the first time too. So we're going to do Superia 400 from Fuji Color Everyday. I'm going to drop the temperature just a tiny bit. I don't want to drop it a lot because if I do, then like her dress becomes blue and then I know it's too far. But I can drop it a little bit. Now looking at her dress, this is a nice neutral to focus on. I can see that there's a little bit of magenta in it. And I can especially see it right here in the chiffon. I don't know what you call that, a tulle? Maybe that's tulle fabric? I don't know. I don't know my fabrics, but I can see it there. So I'm going to decrease the tint towards green just a tiny bit. And I'm looking down in here. So right about there. And I think that is a really nice edit for her skin tone. Like it's a little bit gold, but I think it looks really nice. And what I like about Superia 400 is that it has, like way back in the maternity photo that I edited, it has that micro contrast at a level where it really pops your subject out from the background in a nice way. Not like a fake weird way, but in just a really nice clear way. And you can see that here. You have nice deep shadows in the hair, really nice highlights on her cheekbones. Everything looks good. Even her earring looks really good. So that's what I would recommend on this photo. Yeah, and that's all I have to say about that, Vernon. Thank you for sending it in. All right, I'm going to speed it up here for a second, get through a few. I want to get through all of these. So Joanne Rabinarasoa sent this in. It's a very, very cool photo. It's going to be even cooler when I edit it and we can see more detail in it. You asked for Ektar 100. That is the most colorful and contrasty film we've ever emulated. So I am curious to see what happens in such a lighting situation. I think it could be a little bit tricky, but we'll see. All right. But I mean, Ektar is like a miracle film. So here's Ektar 100. Let's bring up the exposure. Oh man, look at that kid's face. So cute. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm gonna increase the temperature a bit. And then tint, I'm gonna look around. I'm looking around. I'm looking at his shirt. I'm looking at the bedspread and this kid's shirt. It looks a little tiny bit green, so I'm gonna just add the smallest amount of magenta. So like right about there. That looks really good. It looks cool. I like it. I might bring the exposure down just a tiny bit. About to there. Dang, that looks really good, Joanne. So one thing I'm going to do, I haven't talked about this tool yet, is there is a lens correction tool that we have in our toolkit. And there's really a heck of a lot of vignetting happening up here, and it's super distracting. I don't like it. Your eye kind of tends to go to the darkest points in a photo, and I'd rather focus on them than this. So I'm going to go to lens correction on, and there, look at that, so much better. Okay, cool. That's a good photo. I like that one. Look at that. Huh. Yeah, that worked really good. Even though like it was really, really underexposed, the light in this room was really good. And it doesn't really matter if it's underexposed to a point if the actual lighting in the room was pretty even. And apparently it was, because this is like really good. So there you go. Thank you for sending that in. All right, let's keep going. Joshua Treadway, you sent this in. Let me edit it.
He's asking for Fuji pushed versus something else you might suggest.
Okay, and Joshua's asking us right now live for Fuji pushed. That's what I would have picked. I would have picked Fuji push. Why? She's really happy. There's some really good Fuji colors going on in here. So Fuji colors to me are like pinks, pinks and greens look great on Fujifilm. So yeah, I think that's a really good choice. So Fuji color pushed. Let's do, I don't know. Let me see. Boop, 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 boop. That's too much. Let's do Fuji 160 NS push 2 stops. It's got a little bit more micro contrast in there. That's going to be good. So Fuji 160 NS push 2 stops. Now, when you push Fujifilm, what happens? Turns pink. That's just what it does. And I think it looks really cool in the right situation. Also, you get a little more saturation. You get a little more contrast. So we've applied 160 NS, push 2 stops. Exposure wise, I don't think we want to go up any higher. I think that's about right. Now we have a little bit of work to do with temperature and tint. I think it needs to be warmed up quite a bit, but not too much, like somewhere right about here. Okay. Now last but not least, yes, Fuji films go really pink when you push them. But you don't want to go too pink. Like there's also an underlying, tint white balance, range that you want to land in, regardless of what's happening to the toning and the highlights. And I'm going to go all the way back behind her to this white fence, and I'm going to look at that primarily and take away a little bit of this tint, or take a little bit of the magenta away on the tint slider. So just go a little bit towards green. And you can see all the colors kind of fell into place here, like her jacket even the end of her, like her hair, all the rocks, everything. Okay, so now we come back out. Ooh, her hair kind of went a little bit green, actually. Went a little bit too far. Unless her hair has green in it. Situation unclear, proceeding anyways. Maybe I went a little too far on taking the pink out. but I took a little bit of pink out. And the last thing I'm going to do is, it's such a high contrast situation, especially behind her head. I'm going to do all soft. And that just like kind of brings it all together. So there's like the, you know, kind of happy, joyful, pink, peachy, you know, 160 NS pushed look. Now, what else would I do? You wanted a different look as well? I don't know. Let's see. Let's do, I think you need something with a little bit of contrast in the shadows for this image. So, I know. Let's do C200. We don't ever like talk about this film. So C200 is nice. Oh, I gotta bring the exposure down. C200 is nice because it really like tames highlights. It really like flattens them a little bit. It's really the only film except some of the Portra push films that really affect highlights in this way, that they flatten a little bit. And it's kind of nice when you've got this really bright background. So, and it's also a very warm film. So this is C200, Fuji Color Every Day. I got to bring the exposure down just a little bit, bring the temperature up, and tint, yeah, this is a tough one, not gonna lie. A little bit green, just a tiny bit. We've got some kind of reflection going on here. Maybe there's another tree like this reflecting on part of her face. I'm not quite sure. This is a tough image. And then we're going to do all soft. And that is just kind of a different, you know, a different approach to this image, depending on what you want. You don't have all of the pink of the Fuji pushed films, and the pink is kind of replaced with more of yellow warmth. So it really depends on which one you like more. But I hope that was useful to you, helped answer your question. All right, we're going to just blast through these. This is by CT Asaya. Thank you for sending this in. Before I even start, this kind of goes outside of my normal thing, but I'm going to see if Auto Transform can straighten this. No, it can't. Okay, I have to straighten it myself. I just can't do it. There we go. Yep. It's funny. This would be like the first thing I would do when I come back from an event, is I would just straighten my photos, and then I'd be like, okay, I can focus. It's important. Great photo. It's a great scene. Like I love it. Where do we start here? There's a lot of happiness in this photo, a lot of joy. I think you could go for either, you know, my go-to would be Fuji 400H, and we go from there. Let's just do it. Or I would pick like maybe one of the Fuji push ones that we just went over. It would affect this photo quite a bit differently than the previous one. So Fuji 400H, exposure down a little bit. Temperature's got to go way up. Right about here. That looks pretty good. Tint. How's the tint? It looks pretty good. I mean, maybe it's a little bit magenta, just a tiny bit. Yeah, it was. Okay, cool. So, and then I'm going to do all soft, just to kind of soften it up a little bit. There's a little bit of high sun, but that is a quick, easy Fuji 400H edit. Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that so I can get through all the other photos, because that is what I would do if it was my photo. If I was delivering it to a client, I'd put Fuji 400H on it, all soft, dial in the white balance, and it looks really good. I might crop out this little tree bush thing, get it in a little bit tighter. Yeah, that looks nice. Good job. Okay, off we go. Same photographer. Let's just see if we can copy and paste. Boom. Cropping's a little bit not what I intended, but everything else looks pretty good. So I think, yeah, dang, that looks nice. Really cool. What lens is this? This is nice. I normally don't care about lenses at all. 85 at 2.2. Sweet. Nice use of a portrait lens. Really good. Okay, before and after real quick. That is the world's fastest Portra or Fuji 400H edit, but it looks really good. Okay, Ryan Katsanes or Katsanis. I love the title. I love the title for this file. Anything but Superia. Okay. Yeah. Did Superia hurt you in the past? Let's do real quick auto transform. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's good. So auto transform looked at all the bricks, looked at everything, did some kind of magical thing, I don't know, and just corrected the perspective of the photo just a little bit before we started. There was a little bit of them kind of leaning backward, like if you were to look at a building with your camera and it looks like it's falling backward. That happens with people, and the auto transform tool in the toolkit fixes that most of the time, and it's super nice, saves a ton of time. I'm also gonna just pull in the crop a little bit on that side. There we go. Look at that. I haven't even done any presets or anything yet. What would I use on this? Maybe gold. Let's go into the Adventure Everyday pack. Let's try gold. It's too much. It's too much. Let's go back to Portra. Yeah, I think Portra 800 is going to be nice. So Portra 800, I'm going to drop the, and this is from the Portra original pack, I'm going to drop the exposure just a little bit, warm it up, and these rocks are just a fantastic reference point for both temperature and tint. Warm it up a little bit. As far as tint goes, maybe they're a little bit green. Yeah, I just added like a point of magenta. And if you were to just cut them out of this background, everything in here is looking pretty good. These trees are like glowing green, Mountain Dew green, because they are just at such a higher exposure level than the rest of the photo. Watch this. So like, just look at the trees. If I move the exposure slider for the trees, they would be like down here somewhere. So what do? There's a few things you can do, but the one thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over to highlight soft, actually all soft. I'm going to hit all soft, and I'm going to bring out the detail in his like polo shirt here and her dress and in the shadows, and I'm also going to knock down those highlights just a little bit, and that's how I would edit this. So it's not like a radically different edit. It's just a nice, clean, deliverable edit for clients who are going to look at this and be like, that's a really nice photo of us. And they're not going to look at it in 10 years and go, oh, why did they do that really weird, like, you know, brown, no green, faded, weird look that is no longer popular, which may be good for like something that's like a fashion editorial. But if you're delivering like a family portrait, and tell you right now, they're going to want something timeless. That's just facts. I don't know. Prove me wrong. But trends just don't work well at all, ever, for family photos. And I've been through it all. Spot color, like when people used to put textures like in the sky and like erase parts of the textures, or like the sky would be like, look like pea and the shadows would be blue. Does not wear well. No. You want to go timeless for family photos. A little piece of business advice. You know, if you're doing like fashion or something, yeah, go crazy. Do whatever you want. But for a family photo they're going to have for a long time, timeless is the play. All right. Oh, yeah, I saw this come up in the group not too long ago. This is a nice photo. A newer member, too. Jessica Ezel. And you didn't tell me what you wanted on here, so I'll just do what I want. Unless you're watching, and then you will tell me. Who knows? There's a lot of green in here. I think this is like a great candidate for maybe 160 NS. So 160 NS is a more colorful, and this isn't doing it justice. It's a more colorful Fuji 400H. I mean, it varies in quite a few other ways, but that's just an easy way to think of it. and it really focuses on pink, magenta, and cyan. Cyan is just another. It's just a fancy word for blue. Well, not really blue. It's kind of cyan is cyan, but if you're wondering what cyan is, it's kind of a bluish green. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so 160 NS. Increase the exposure, bring out those midtones, increase the temperature a little bit. His shirt is a little bit magenta. I don't need to zoom in. There we go. It's a nice photo. 160 NS. Now, if that's too colorful for you, we could just do 400H and just call it a day. So let's do 400H. And here are your kind of choices. You know, it depends on what you like. We have the more saturated, colorful 160 NS on the left, and then Fuji 400H on the right. And I think both look really good. All right, last but not least, I think it's the baby photo with the cool sunglasses. Oh, it's not the one with the sunglasses. It's the other baby photo I like. Okay. So this is from Jesse Nelson. Any preset. Oh, gosh, that's called the paralysis of choice. You don't give someone the choice of anything. Just tell them. No, I'm kidding. Okay, lots of green. This looks like, you know, Southern California. So I'm gonna go. And this is a pretty happy baby. Like an 8 out of 10 happy. Like if it was 10 out of 10, it'd be like, yee, you know. But it's pretty happy. So let's try Ektar. Warmed up. And unlike this photo, which is kind of meant to be more mysterious, I mean, especially like her look, where I think it fits more to have a kind of a dark and moody look, where we don't want this like kind of happy joy color to come through with this mood. However, we do with this photo. Does that make sense? This photo, yes. Happy baby. What does the saying go? Happy baby, happy life. Babies are never happy. I mean, they're happy for like a minute. But the happiness of the baby plus Ektar is like double happy. It's really good. So I think Ektar is good for this. Happy. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. So anyway, I hope that was helpful. It's really fun to play with community members' photos, and I really appreciate you sending them in. If you enjoyed this episode, we do this every week. You can send in your photos. You can come into the group. You can join our group. It's a fantastic group. Just go to our community on Facebook. Go to Mastin Labs community. And yeah, join us, and you can drop in your photo, and it will be edited by either one of us or a community member or like 10 different people. And you can see what Mastin Labs looks like on your photos, and you can see how easy it is. If you need to get in touch with us personally, you can always do that at m.me/Mastin Labs. Send us a personal message. We're happy to help you out. We want to see you succeed. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the little bell dinger, ding the dinger, so you don't miss any of these live episodes. You'll get alerted, and you will be able to ask questions. And if you submitted your work, you'll get to see me edit it live, which is awesome. So I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, have a great day and happy editing.